What's going on, everybody? It's Alfredo Brown with Football Guys, and I'm talking to you about 3 must-start players that you got to have in your lineups for week 1. And you know what? I'm going to avoid the obvious starters, right? Everyone knows you should be starting Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Justin Jefferson, guys like that. I'm going a little bit deeper here, and what I'm going to do is look at 3 players, okay, that are outside of the top 24. These are running backs and wide receivers outside of the top 24 on footballguys.com consensus rankings that I have ranked a little bit higher that I think absolutely need to be in your starting lineups this week for week 1. Football is here. Let's get started.
Perfect.
All right, before we get into those rankings, I do want to tell you guys, if you have any questions about start, sit, anything like that, head on over to footballguys.com. You can check out the rankings section, and we've got our rankings for each week. You can check that out. You can always look at the dynasty rankings as well. Just click the tab on the top left part that says rankings. You'll be able to check out everything we've got there. Also, don't forget, you can head on over to our Discord server and ask your questions about week 1. And there's going to be a lot of last-minute stuff going on, so don't be afraid to ask your questions. We'll get them answered and make sure you're winning in week 1. Let's get started. All right, my first player I'm going to talk about is Christian Kirk, and right now he's ranked as the wide receiver 32 on Football Guys consensus rankings. Now, the Jaguars go up against the Washington Commanders this week, and it's a pretty favorable matchup. I actually have Christian Kirk ranked as my wide receiver 27 this week, just a bit higher, almost into that top 24. The thing is that Kirk is the top wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He got paid like one, and he's going to be targeted like one. Now, what he does with those targets is yet to be seen, but I think that we should see a much improved Jacksonville Jaguars offense, a much improved Trevor Lawrence this year. Doug Peterson has a track record of improving offenses and mostly improving passing attacks as well. Last season, the Washington Commanders tied for the most points allowed to opposing wide receivers. Washington also gave up the 4th most receiving yards, the 5th most receiving touchdowns. Everything just looks good for Christian Kirk. Both of these offenses in Jacksonville and Washington should be better. So we should see a few more points scored this week. I really like Christian Kirk as a starting wide receiver in your lineup this week. All right, the next guy I want to talk about here is Damien Pierce, the running back for the Houston Texans. And right now he's ranked as the RB 31 on footballguys.com consensus ranks. And I've got him quite a bit higher. He's my running back 24. And I think I've talked about Damien Pierce at least 963 times this offseason, but here we go. We're right here finally to week 1. The hype train is at full steam, and well, he's going up against the Indianapolis Colts, and just when you thought things couldn't keep getting better for him, it just does. He's already the starting running back for the Houston Texans. They kind of have no choice but to use him. Outside of Damien Pierce, who do they have? Rex Burkhead, an over-the-hill running back who's mostly a receiving role. Damien Pierce is actually a really good pass blocker. So you're going to see him in there on passing downs as well. It's not a foregone conclusion that Burkhead takes all of the passing down work. And the thing is that Pierce is going to be the goal line guy. He's going to be the guy with the volume. And then going up against the Colts this week, they're missing one of their best, if not the best, defensive player on their roster in Shaquille Leonard, who last year led the league in forced fumbles and had one of the best run defense grades according to Pro Football Focus. So I really like Damien Pierce this week. I think you can fire him up with confidence in that running back spot in week 1. All right, the last guy I'm going to talk about here is Rashod Bateman, wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. And right now he's the wide receiver 31 on the Football Guys consensus ranks on the website. He's my wide receiver 23, another guy that I'm much higher on than the consensus here at Football Guys. And you know, he's going up against the New York Jets. This is a pretty good matchup for him, and I know that a lot of people get worried that, well, the Ravens are going to run more, and this game could get out of hand, and they could just run a lot. Yeah, they absolutely could. Bateman is still the wide receiver 1 on this team, and there's not much else outside of him and Mark Andrews. And do we really think they're just going to be running the brakes off Mike Davis in week 1? Lamar Jackson has to throw the ball sometime, and he's going to be getting this ball to his wide receiver 1. Now, he should be in this Marquise Brown type role from last year where Brown was getting 9 targets per game. Now, maybe he doesn't quite get that because the passing volume should be down, but you're still looking at a wide receiver with talent that should be getting 7 to 8 targets in this game. That absolutely constitutes as a starting wide receiver in your lineup. Now, last season, the Jets gave up the 3rd most passing yards in the league, and the Jets also ranked bottom 3rd in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, PFF coverage grades, and they've got rookie Sauce Gardner that's going to be covering Rashod Bateman on Sunday. I know there's a lot of hype around Sauce Gardner, and I do think he's a fantastic prospect. He's still a rookie starting his first game against an MVP caliber quarterback. I'm perfectly fine starting Rashod Bateman this week going up against the New York Jets. And here's some other names to be, just aware of. If you start to get really desperate in your leagues and you need some starters, take a look at these names, okay? I know I kind of laughed off Mike Davis there a second ago, but he is a decent desperation play if you absolutely need someone at running back, okay? The Jets aren't a great run defense team, and Mike Davis should be getting the start this week with J.K. Dobbins still hurt. Amir Abdullah is another name to consider with that new Raiders backfield and the way that they're going to be passing that ball around. Amir Abdullah becomes a desperation play. A.J. Green and Sammy Watkins. What year is it? I know. But we got these old wide receivers that are thrust into starting roles with good quarterbacks, good offenses. They actually could produce really well in week 1. That's all I got for you guys this week. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. If you want to see all the rankings, head on over to footballguys.com. And don't forget, you can drop your questions in the Discord server.